Hello from New York. I'm Dan Harris alongside Paula Ferris, and we are coming on the air with some great news about the rescue operation to save members of that young soccer team and their coach trapped in a cave in Thailand for more than 2 weeks.
And this was the scene just outside the cave where it's already Sunday night as 4 of the players were brought to safety just a few hours ago in what's been a complicated and risky operation.
They were taken to the hospital by ambulance and by helicopter. They're now being evaluated and treated.
The boys ranging in ages 11 to 16 were extracted at a pace much faster than expected.
It's really an incredible development. Divers had been standing by to make this rescue. They started the operation overnight. They started bringing the first boys out late last night, Thailand time, which was early this morning here, U.S. time. They came, those boys, from nearly 3 miles deep inside that cave.
And we want to show you a virtual view of the treacherous route that the divers took them through in an operation that will continue in the hours to come. Again, 4 have been rescued. 8 remain along with their soccer coach.
So let's go to ABC's Matt Gutman on the scene in Chiang Rai, Thailand. Matt, what are you hearing now?
It was a stupendous day for these people, Dan and Paula. So what they're doing right now is trying to regroup, and you may be able to see some traffic behind me. They are sending more oxygen tanks back into that cave area. They've got to replenish the supplies. They're also now pumping additional oxygen in there. There's some concern that the oxygen levels have dipped, and we don't expect them to begin extracting additional boys, those 8 boys left plus the coach, probably for another 6 or 7 or 8 hours, not until morning. They're going to regroup and try to go at this again. Now, the way they did it, as you described, is incredibly complex. It's this sort of choreographed dance underwater in this cave, miles inside. So each one of the boys had 2 divers with him. They were conveyed along this serpentine route underground, some of it underwater, for miles. They stopped at certain chambers where there's much more air to regroup and try to assess the boys' health, and they moved on. The first one came out at about 5:40 p.m. local time. The next one came out about 20 minutes later. Then an hour and a half or so later, the other 2 boys came out, separated by about 10 minutes. And, I can tell you at this intersection here, where we've seen so much activity, there's just jubilation. There was a line of soldiers right here who saluted the rescue workers when they came out. It was such an amazing moment. But you guys have mentioned this. This is an incredibly torturous and difficult thing to do, right? So not only do they have to travel for hours on end to get through that route, but the ceiling of the cave is filled with stalactites, jagged quartz rock. They've got to deal with the water and obviously the possible fear of these boys panicking while they have these full face masks on their face. But it seems that everybody did splendidly well, and obviously those boys are now recovering at a hospital, likely suffering from some sort of exhaustion or something, but clearly a very difficult ordeal for them for the past 16 days now. Dan and Paula.
Yeah, so far, Matt, thank you. So far, it has been a best-case scenario, but they are not out of the woods yet. Let's send things over to James Longman, who's also on the ground there. And James, this continues to be a race against time. We know that they've taken a little bit of time off. 8 boys remain in that cave as well as their coach, but it's a race against time, and it looks like the rains are coming.
Yeah, that's been the whole issue from the very beginning, Paula, to beat the rain. And the whole issue is the water level in that cave. From the very start, at least when we knew that these boys were in the cave, because remember, to begin with, for the first few days of this, they were lost and there was no sign of them. But the rescuers discovered that they were there. There was real jubilation in the camp, where everyone was based. And then the realization that actually they had to be gotten out. And that the aim was to bring down the water, and that was a big problem for the last few days. Even though the camp was dry, it seemed that they weren't able to really bring it down as much as they would have liked. It was being brought down by 1 or 2 centimeters a day. They had something like 60 pumps. They had one pump had something like 400 horsepower. Working around the clock. They put dams in to try to get the water diverted away from the cave. It seems that water was brought out from some of the more difficult parts of the cave, and most importantly, they got rid of some of the rock which was preventing the boys from being able to come out without having to dip their head against the water. The rescuers said from the very beginning they did not want these boys to have to fully submerge themselves for extended periods of time. They wanted to bring them along the top of the water. So that was a real breakthrough. They used these underwater jackhammers to break down the rock. But now, as you can see, the rain has returned, and it's unclear what that's going to do to the situation inside the cave. if they've built enough dams to make sure that this rain won't make a difference. But remember, these caves sit under an enormous mountain range. It is basically a natural drainage system for a jungle. And all that water is seeping down into what is a limestone cave, and water comes in from all over the place. It seeps inside. So tonight, I think there will be perhaps a little bit of concern that this rain could make a difference. Hopefully it isn't strong enough to really delay the rescue operation, but rescuers have been saying, authorities have been saying that they are fully committed to getting the rest of these boys out. This, if anything, is just going to push them to do it more quickly.
Yeah, it's a great day, but to underline your point, there's still a lot of work to be done, reason for concern. 9 families worried about their children, and also the family, of course, of the coach, the 25-year-old coach who led them into that cave and has subsequently apologized for it. But one reason for hope is that they told us, with the 4 weakest boys. They wanted to get them out first. And the fact that they were able to take the weakest boys and move ahead of schedule, that has to be a source of optimism. And I wonder if we can get you to talk a little bit, James, since you've been on the scene from the very beginning of this story, about how the mood has shifted over in various ways over the past 2 weeks.
Dan, it's been a real ride. You know, we arrived here very early on to a story where I think probably most of the kind of international types like us came here thinking, could they really find these boys in this enormous cave? We were told how big it was. It goes from here in Thailand, we're in the very northern part of the country, into Myanmar, another country. This cave system is enormous. So the idea that they would even find them at the very beginning was kind of ludicrous. But lo and behold, they did, and they even found them further inside the cave than they had originally anticipated. So there was great euphoria. But then it really did dawn on everyone in the camp just how difficult it was going to be to get these boys out. There was a really, really strong current. We saw images of rescue divers pulling themselves hand over fist along ropes to try to get themselves up that cave. 5-6 hours of diving for very fit, strong Navy SEALs. And then, of course, a few days ago, the sad death of one of those former Thai Navy SEAL rescue volunteers who had spent his time delivering oxygen tanks and air tanks into that cave to allow people to get further down. He ended up dying of a lack of oxygen. So I think at that point, that was probably the lowest it's been since the beginning of this whole situation. So it's a reminder really of how difficult this whole process has been, his death. And yes, as you say, a real ride. But hopefully we're seeing the end of it. But again, I mean, you know, this rain, I think this is really a worry now.
Yeah, just the range of emotions that so many have endured, and they have to take a break, James, to pump more oxygen into the caves, and then they will resume trying to extract the remaining 8 boys and the soccer coach. But I just can't imagine what those families, James, thank you. I can't imagine what those families are going through right now. And we want to join Adrian Bankert, who's just outside one of the local hospitals there. We know 4 boys are at the hospital. And Adrian, what kind of treatment will they undergo once they're at the hospital?
Well, the 4 boys who are here on scene, we know they're on that 8th floor that we were told by officials has been reserved for all 13 who are coming out of that cave. And they will be reunited with family. The ones here, we suspect, already in their mothers and fathers and aunties and uncles' arms. We do know that they'll be undergoing complete medical evaluations besides what was done already for them in the staging area inside that cave. I mean, all along the way, they've had doctors and nurses and paramedics alongside of them. We saw from what officials have told us that they had a field hospital there at the cave site. James and Matt have been reporting on that. And then they were transported to an ambulance, which took them to the helicopter, which took them to another ambulance, which brought them right here to this hospital's doorstep. Now, we do know that they'll be checked for infections. There is a cave disease, as it's called, an airborne lung infection that is of concern just from them being inside that cave and the conditions there. The dampness of the cave, being around water so long and then being in the water, there are concerns that they may need to be tested and treated for any type of bacterial infection as a result of all of that. And just their mental and emotional state, being in the dark that long, throwing off circadian rhythms, being away from their families and friends, being away from a normal routine or exercise. I mean, these are young soccer players ages 11 to 16. Imagine the energy that your son or nephew or cousin has, and that they're trapped inside this very enclosed space for 2 weeks straight. It was already mentioned that this coach really has been adding to the camaraderie and the hopefulness of the team, really keeping these young boys alive and alert. But they will be treated if any of them have post-traumatic stress disorder, which doctors have told us is certainly possible, where they'll have nightmares or be concerned about being in enclosed spaces or fearful of the dark. But again, they'll be all treated here on that 8th floor and reunited with their families. And that is a good thing. Paula and Dan.
Absolutely, but we can't say it enough. There are 8 more children in there yet to be rescued, along with their coach. Adrian Bankert outside the hotel in Chiang Rai. We appreciate it. And this image really underscores the poignancy and the team nature of this rescue effort. It's a picture put out on Facebook by the Royal Thai Navy SEALs with the caption, "We, both the Thai and international teams, will bring out the wild boar team." The soccer team, they're the wild boars. We'll bring them back home, Huya. The wild boars, 8 of them still in that cave tonight. There are 18 divers who participated in today's rescue, 13 foreigners, 5 Thai Navy SEALs. And so let's go back to Matt Gutman to talk a little bit, Matt, if you would, about what a team effort this is, what an international effort this is.
You know, we focus on the divers a lot, and we talk about those 13 divers who physically escorted, or 13 foreigners who physically escorted those boys out of the cave, or at least the first 4. But really, this has been a massive Herculean effort by so many others. There are 90 total divers involved in today's rescue alone, 50 of them foreigners, so that's a large number. But also, we've had people from all over the world just physically haul gas tanks, air tanks, all the way into the cave. There are people who have laid rope across. There are communications set up from places like Israel. There are divers from Finland and Belgium and Holland and England and the United States. So it has really, truly been an international effort. And one of the things they have to commend the Thai authorities for, they have not been ashamed about asking for help. They have taken everybody in. They have invited us in as if we are their own family. And everybody with whom I've spoken has said that the atmosphere here has been just incredible, so participatory and accepting, that they have really, I mean, obviously it's been incredibly difficult work for them, but they have felt like they are part of this Thai family. And just to be able to cap it off, at least with those first 4 rescues, has been tremendous for so many of those involved here.
Yeah, the international community is certainly rejoicing. This has been an inspiring and collaborative effort. But Matt, it is dark where you are. It's almost midnight in Thailand. And Thai officials said that they were going to take a break, about a 10 to 20 hour break from extracting the remaining boys and their soccer coach. Can you explain to everyone at home why that's necessary?
I think because they had so many people involved in this rescue, it literally was the final push. They threw everything at this they had, but they also expended a tremendous amount of resources. So, as James mentioned, there are enormous amount of pumps pushing water out, millions of gallons at a time. There are divers who are spent, they're tired, and they have literally posted hundreds of air tanks along the route for the divers and their teams around them, multiple people to use as they go through. And one diver described it to me as like climbing Mount Everest. It is so physically exerting. And today we spent an hour in a cave that was similar to it, minus the water. And, you know, within 5 minutes, I was huffing and puffing. So they're going through air at a tremendous pace. They've got to build back their stockpile of those air tanks. They're pumping in gas as well, oxygen, to try to make sure that the other boys and their coach are ready for this journey. And they probably want to do it without the rain and without all this mud and the darkness. So even the people who are in support roles outside the cave don't have to suffer through these conditions as well. So the key goal right now was not only to get the boys out, but to get them out safely. There are so many pitfalls in that cave, and I think after today's success, they want to take it slowly. But again, from the start, they told us this could take 3 to 4 days, and we hope it doesn't, but I think they are willing to take that time if they feel like they need it.
It's a Herculean task, and the camaraderie, the cooperation, really the best of humanity on display here. Matt Gutman, our thanks to you and the rest of the team covering this story in Chiang Rai.